On October 1st, 2025, the United States government officially shut down. This wasn't theoretical. National parks were closed. According to CBS News, nearly 900,000 federal employees were furloughed, sent home without a paycheck. The Guardian reported that the SNAP program, which provides food assistance to 41 million Americans, was immediately threatened. The message from Washington was clear. The country is out of money, and yet during this exact same period of domestic crisis, the U.S. Treasury quietly announced a $40 billion financial support package for Argentina. Let that sink in. A government that claims it cannot pay its own park rangers just sent $40 billion to a foreign country. And not just any country, a country currently experiencing over 200% hyperinflation. A country that is a serial defaulter on its national debt. This brings us to the central question: how? How does a government that is shut down find $40 billion to send overseas? If you are thinking, my congressional representative would never approve this, you are correct. This $40 billion package was never debated on the floor of the House. It was not voted on by the Senate. It was not authorized by any new law. It was authorized, according to the Treasury's own press release, by one man, the 79th Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. This is not how your government is supposed to operate. It's not how a constitutional republic functions. Unless there is another mechanism, a mechanism that operates outside of public view and outside of congressional control. The $40 billion Argentina deal isn't the real story. It is simply the cover story. The real story is about a financial superweapon that has been sitting dormant for 90 years, and it just got reactivated. Today, we are not just going to analyze the bailout. We are going to decode how it was done. I am going to expose the most powerful financial tool you have never heard of. It's called the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and it changes everything you thought you knew about how power works in Washington. The weapon revealed. To understand what is happening in 2025, we must go back to 1934. The United States was in the depths of the Great Depression. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was facing a banking system in total collapse. He needed capital, and he needed it fast. So he did something unprecedented. Through the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, Roosevelt ordered all American citizens to sell their private gold holdings to the government. The mandatory price was $20.67 per ounce. Then immediately after collecting the nation's gold, Roosevelt did something even more radical. He signed a proclamation that revalued that same gold to $35 per ounce. Overnight, the U.S. government had manufactured a paper profit of $2.8 billion. But Roosevelt had a problem. He knew that if he gave that $2.88 billion to Congress, they would spend it immediately. He wanted to keep it for himself. So he locked $2 billion of that profit away in a brand new entity. This new entity would not be controlled by the Federal Reserve. It would not be controlled by Congress. It would be controlled exclusively by the Secretary of the Treasury. He called it the Exchange Stabilization Fund, or ESF. Mini hook. Now, why is this 90-year-old fund the main character of our story? Because of the power it holds. Think of the ESF as the Treasury's private, off-the-books bank account. It is not tax money. It is not money printed by the Fed. Its assets are primarily U.S. dollars, foreign currencies, and other financial instruments. And here is the most important part, the part that makes the Argentina deal possible. The Secretary of the Treasury, with the approval of the President, has sole authority over this fund. He can use it to stabilize the dollar or foreign currencies. And the legal definition of stabilize is incredibly vague. Let me be perfectly clear. They do not need congressional approval to use this money. According to the law, for a long-term loan, like the one given to Argentina, all the president must do is notify Congress that an emergency exists. No vote, no debate, no oversight, just a notification. This is a slush fund hidden in plain sight with tens of billions of dollars. Now, for most of history, the ESF was a financial doomsday weapon. It was only used in extreme circumstances when Washington needed to act with speed and complete secrecy. In 1995, President Bill Clinton used the ESF to bypass a hostile Congress and send $20 billion to rescue Mexico during the tequila crisis. In 2008, during the financial meltdown, the ESF was used to guarantee $50 billion in money market funds to stop a catastrophic run on the banks. And in 2020, during the pandemic, the ESF provided the seed capital for the Federal Reserve's emergency lending facilities. In all three cases, it was used for one reason: to act immediately without a single vote from Congress. And in October 2025, it was activated again. But this time, the emergency was different. The official story is that the United States is now in a new financial war. The cover story, the BRICS threat. To understand the official reason for the Argentina bailout, you must understand the man who authorized it, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Bessent is not a typical Washington bureaucrat. He is a Wall Street macro investor. And since taking office in January 2025, he has been very public about his one central mission. He believes the U.S. has been asleep at the wheel for a decade, allowing its global financial dominance to be challenged. The challenger, in his eyes, is not a single country. It is the BRICS bloc, led by China. And the battlefield is de-dollarization. Here is what the Treasury sees, and this part is true. For years, China has been waging a quiet war against the dollar. It uses its Belt and Road Initiative to lend billions in its own currency, the yuan, to developing nations. This pulls those nations into China's economic orbit. Simultaneously, the BRICS alliance is expanding. It has added major oil producers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. It is openly discussing the creation of a new reserve currency, possibly backed by gold, to bypass the US dollar entirely. The goal is to build a parallel financial system, one where China, not the US, sets the rules. This brings us to Argentina. Why is Argentina so important? Two reasons: lithium and influence. Argentina sits on one of the world's largest reserves of lithium, the key ingredient for electric vehicle batteries. China has already invested billions to secure access to that lithium. It is also Argentina's second-largest trading partner and has poured money into its infrastructure. From the Treasury's perspective, Argentina was about to be lost. It was about to become a full-fledged client state of China, right in America's backyard. So the official narrative is this: the $40 billion is not a bailout. It is a strategic move in a U.S. versus BRICS financial war. The Treasury argues that this was a national security emergency. We had to use the Exchange Stabilization Fund because if we had waited for Congress to debate it, China would have stepped in and rescued Argentina first. The U.S. had to prove that the dollar was still the only real lifeline in a crisis. This story makes perfect sense. It's a compelling, patriotic defense of American power. But it has one massive hole. What if fighting China was just the perfect cover story for something else? What if the primary goal wasn't just to save Argentina from China, but to save a very specific group of investors from Argentina? The real motive, the Wall Street connection. In any investigation, the first question you must ask is, qui bono? Who benefits? When you follow the $40 billion, you find it doesn't go to the Argentinian people. They are still suffering from 200% inflation. The money, specifically the first $20 billion from the ESF, is being used for currency swaps. The U.S. Treasury is buying Argentina's collapsing currency, the peso, and giving them stable U.S. dollars in return. This intervention does one thing. It props up the value of Argentina's currency. And by propping up the currency, it dramatically increases the value of Argentina's government bonds. Which brings us to the next question. Who is holding all of those nearly worthless bonds? For the last 2 years, Wall Street hedge funds have been playing a high-stakes gamble. They have been buying up billions of dollars in what is called distressed debt. Let's make that simple. Imagine you buy a $100 IOU from someone you know is bankrupt, but you only pay $25 for it. You are making a bet that somehow someone will force that person to pay. This is exactly what hedge funds did. They bought billions in Argentine bonds for pennies on the dollar, as low as 25 to 35 cents. They were betting that the new MAGA president, Javier Milei, could fix the economy. But they bet wrong. Milei failed. Inflation kept soaring. The bonds kept collapsing. The funds that made this gamble were bleeding billions of dollars. Their $25 bet was about to go to zero. And this is where we connect the dots. Dot number 1. The Treasury Secretary. Who is Scott Bessent? As we said, he is not a civil servant. He is a Wall Street legend. His entire career was built as a macro investor. From 1991 to 2015, he was a key executive and later the chief investment officer at Soros Fund Management. Dot number 2. Bessent's expertise. This is the most critical piece of information. Scott Bessent is not just from Wall Street. He is one of the world's leading experts in the exact type of trade he is now rescuing. This is the man who famously helped George Soros make $1 billion in 1992 by betting against the British pound. This is the man who made $1.2 billion in 2013 by betting against the Japanese yen. His entire life has been spent making or breaking foreign currencies and sovereign debt, and now he is the Treasury Secretary with sole control over a secret $40 billion fund. Let's put this together. A group of hedge funds, the same class of macro investors that Scott Bessent was a part of, made a bad bet on Argentina. They are facing catastrophic losses. Then their former colleague, Scott Bessent, steps in. He activates the Exchange Stabilization Fund, a tool no one is watching, and announces a $40 billion rescue. The intervention immediately sends the value of those worthless Argentine bonds soaring. As a Reuters analyst said just this month, October 2025, the recently announced support from the U.S. Treasury will give investors a lot of confidence to get back into the bond market. The ESF did not just fight China, it just bailed out an entire class of Wall Street investors from their own bad gamble. It is a private bailout, funded by a secret public tool and disguised as a public geopolitical war. And while this happens, as the original video pointed out, American farmers are being told to brace for more competition from subsidized Argentine beef, all while their own government is shut down. The new playbook. This brings us to the dangerous conclusion. The $40 billion Argentina deal was not the end of the story. It was a test case. It was a Trojan horse that reactivated the Exchange Stabilization Fund. The Treasury has now successfully proven that it can conduct major foreign policy and bail out private interests, all without a single vote from Congress. They have proven they can bypass democracy as long as they invoke the name of China or BRICS. The ESF is no longer a dusty 90-year-old relic. It is now the Treasury's primary unaccountable weapon, and this playbook will be used again. Look at Brazil, look at Colombia, look at Egypt. All of them are in debt. All of them are being courted by China. They are all perfect candidates for the next emergency rescue using the ESF. So let's be clear about the thesis. The $40 billion Argentina bailout was a Trojan horse. It reactivated the Exchange Stabilization Fund, transforming it into the Treasury's secret weapon. A weapon to be used, without your oversight, to simultaneously bail out Wall Street allies and fight a shadow financial war against BRICS. We have just decoded the weapon, the ESF, but now we must look at the next battleground. In our next video, we will investigate which country is next on China's list in Latin America and how the ESF is already being positioned to respond to the rise of BRICS. The Argentina deal was the perfect test for this power. Now that the playbook has been proven successful, which U.S. ally or which failing Wall Street fund do you believe will be rescued next using the ESF?